When you buy Kroger brand products, you feel like you're winning. That's because they offer proven quality at lower than low prices. In fact, we guarantee that you and your family will love how Kroger brand products taste, or you get your money back. So next time you're shopping for the family, look for delicious Kroger brand products, because they'll make you all feel like you're winning. Shop now, in-store, or online. Bakers, fresh for everyone.
You're listening to The Drag.
This podcast contains strong language, references, and descriptions of domestic abuse, violence, and suicide. It also has graphic descriptions of gun violence in schools. Mental health is an important part of this story, so please take care while listening. Previously on this season of Darkness.
It was hot, typical August.
It was summer school, so not as many people were around as during the fall and spring.
It was after much thought that I decided to kill my wife, Kathy, tonight after I pick her up from work at the telephone company. I love her dearly, and she has been as fine a wife to me as any man could ever hope to have. I cannot rationally pinpoint any specific reason for doing this.
Not a single story that I'd prepared to be covered that day was covered at all.
"18-year-old Claire Wilson sat in the University of Texas's Student Union basement. The summer semester was Claire's first, but she had made friends in Austin quickly. She'd met 18-year-old Thomas Ekman in her anthropology class, and they began dating.
It was pretty much love at first sight. We just never were apart after that.
Tom was taking summer classes at the University of Texas before attending Houston-Tillotson University in the fall.
And he was very different. He was really, a poet, a musician.
During a downtown shopping trip a few days earlier, Tom helped Claire pick out the dress she wore on August 1st, 1966.
But the thing I loved about it was it had this ribbon that went, I think, probably around the sleeves. And so the sleeves were like a little bit gathered, but then they only went, probably about halfway down your upper arm, and had a cuff around it and a button. But this ribbon that they had put on was black with these little pink flowers and green leaves. And I just don't know how to tell you how beautiful it was.
The dress was special to her since it was her first maternity dress. She was 8 months pregnant. She was pregnant when they first met, and Tom had been very supportive of Claire and her pregnancy. With her new dress on, she and Tom had gone to the Chuck Wagon to eat. The Chuck Wagon was the cafeteria in the basement of the student union on campus. That day, some friends had joined them for lunch. One of them invited Tom to play pool. However, Claire and Tom had to leave, at least temporarily.
We had parked our car over there, and Tom said, no, we've got to go put a nickel in the parking meter or we won't be able to park on campus anymore because we already had a couple of pink slips.
Their friend suggested Tom send Claire by herself to feed the meter, while he and Tom started their round of pool.
Tom looked at him like, are you nuts? Look at her. She's 8 months pregnant, and it's hot outside, and why would I let her go by herself to do that? So we walked over. We were walking from the Chuck Wagon, the student union, and we walked, that's the West Mall.
The West Mall is one of the walkways that spreads out from the tower, and the Texas Capitol building is just a few blocks south of the tower. At 307 feet, the tower rose much higher than any other campus building. Claire and Tom turned a corner around the tower and were walking on the South Mall toward their car. The South Mall is a long promenade that starts with a grand fountain of Greco-Roman design. The fountain features 3 horses carrying a winged man out of the shallow blue water. Today, it's an unofficial tradition for students to jump in the fountain after graduation. Behind it is a sprawling grassy lawn. School buildings, huge oak trees, and benches line the walkway up to the base of the tower. Students go there even today to study or pass time between classes. And the tower looms over it all. On the way to the parking meter, Claire and Tom walked right below the tower. The blinding sun beat down on them in a large, open, paved area.
So we were walking, and, there's always construction going on. At least there was when we were there. I mean, there's just always something, some building, something. So I heard a jackhammer. I know I heard a jackhammer breaking up concrete.
Despite the noise, Claire could still hear Tom chatting to her.
Tom and I were talking, and he was saying he was worried about if I were getting enough proper nutrition. I said I had orange juice this morning, and I had such and such, and all of a sudden I felt like I was being electrocuted. And he reached out, and he said, "Baby." And then he was shot, up around the neck. That was the last word he said was, "Baby." Maybe he said, "What's wrong?" or something. I just remember the baby. We started falling down. So my first thought was it was electrocution, because it just feels like this huge jolt. I didn't really feel pain. And so I started falling, and then it felt like I was melting into the concrete, so I thought it was maybe a war from outer space or something. That's the effect of losing blood. It feels like you're melting when you lose a whole lot of blood.
I'm Sarah Kinney, and this is Season 4 of Darkness. You're listening to Episode 2. At 11:52 a.m. on August 1st, a professor called the police station when he saw Claire and Tom lying on the South Plaza.
Hello, this is Michael Hall at the History Department on the University campus. Yes, sir. There's just been a gunshot on the main plaza outside the main building, and at least one person wounded.
The main plaza?
Yes.
And your name is Michael Hall at the History Building?
That's right.
Is that out near the fountain?
That's up by the right in front of the tower.
Right in front of the tower.
Still shooting. It sounds like rifle shots.
All right, sir. We'll have an officer come by right away. Thank you, sir.
Claire and Tom were the sniper's first targets from the observation deck. By the time of Michael's call, more people had been shot. In 1966, 911 didn't exist, so people would call the local police station directly. And calls began flooding into the Austin Police Department.
Someone, I think, in the tower who's taking pot shots at the students out in the mall.
A sniper, someone is avoided to leave outside. Someone is shooting from the man shooting at us from across the street at the university. Somebody on the tower over here who's shooting.
There's some kind of a madman on the university campus.
There's someone out here shooting people in the street.
At the KTBC newsroom, news director Neil Spelse listened to the police radio.
In the newsroom, police radios crackle all the time. They're going. And even though we have the teletype machines kind of in a closet, you can still hear the clackety, clackety, clack. So you've got clackety, clackety, clack, and you've got your police radio doing it. And then you're piping in the programming from TV and the programming from radio. So you've got all these sounds going on. But your ear really listens to the police radio more precisely. It's kind of a laser focus on the police radio, but you hear all this other stuff as well.
The radio gave the first hint of something wrong near campus.
Just before noon, there was a report, I can still hear it, and it was something like this, not verbatim, but something like this. Unit 245, we have a report of a shooting at the tower. Can you please investigate? Okay. So I think, oh boy, there may be a robbery going on out there, or something like that.
He kept listening.
We need all the units we can at the University Tower.
But then just soon thereafter, Unit 522, we have another report of a shooting at the tower. Something, okay, now you perk up. Something's happening, more than one report. And the police radio started crackling with that over. So I turned to Phil Miller, who was a sports guy, and say, Phil, can you check that out? I'm getting ready to go on the air. And he said, yeah, I'm going to lunch. I'll just hop in my car and drive out there and see what it's all about.
While his reporter Phil headed out, Neil went on the air.
At the top of the hour, the radio newscast, I say, we have a report of shooting at the University of Texas Tower. We'll be back with more news and update that report following CBS News.
Neil stepped out of the radio booth after his show. When he returned to the newsroom,
the police radio is going, we have a report shooting from atop the tower. All of a sudden they were saying, ambulances have been dispatched.
Well, I got an ambulance at 24th and Rio Grande. What do you need? I need him at 2310 Guadalupe.
The police radio blared more reports of people being shot. Neil and his radio editor, Joe Roddy, left the newsroom. They each took one of KTBC's iconic Red Rovers. The radio editor headed to Brackenridge Hospital, the city's only trauma center, while Neil drove toward campus just after noon. And the closer he got to campus, the clearer the chaos became.
As I got closer and closer, still talking, it was a cacophony of sound. Now, think about that. You go, bow, bow, bow. Stop that man. Say, help that guy. He's getting shot. Watch out. Boom, boom. Everything was happening like that, and the sirens just roaring by because every ambulance in the city from the different funeral homes from all around the city were converging on the University of Texas campus.
Emergency medical services were far different from today. Police still dispatched vehicles, but the local funeral homes owned many of the ambulances and hearses sent out that day. The vehicles were essentially taxis, dedicated to taking people either to the hospital or the funeral home. And the responders weren't medics, so they couldn't provide any professional medical treatment to the passengers. Police cars were also different from what we know them as today. Back then, police cars didn't have a standardized model or design, which made them harder to spot. The only distinction between a civilian's car and a police car was a small sticker on the car's door that said Austin Police, along with an insignia and a unit number. And there were no campus cops or SWAT teams. There had never been a mass shooting like this before in Texas. So as it unfolded, the people in Austin had no idea what to do. In a classroom near the South Mall Plaza, Brenda Bell had just finished her quiz in her Shakespeare class. Loud noises disrupted the quiet classroom.
Our professor started his lecture, but he didn't get very far into it before he paused because there was noise going on outside. He looked toward the windows. You could tell that it kind of concerned him too. And then he looked back to us and resumed his lecture, but we all kind of looked out.
Trees blocked most of their view from the window, so the students couldn't see what was happening on the plaza. The professor's calm demeanor kept the students from panicking at the noises outside.
Dr. Ayers, as I later found out, had been in the Korean War. And I think we all had the same thought. We thought, well, if those are gunshots, he would know. And he did know, but it didn't fit, and so he ignored them.
The students tried to focus while Dr. Ayers continued his lecture.
Then another professor, an older man, came to the door and said, "You need to move them away from the windows. Somebody is shooting from the tower," which had the immediate effect of making us all run to the windows and see what was happening. And that was when we saw people lying on the mall.
Near where Claire and Tom were lying, a police officer approached the South Mall's plaza. 23-year-old Officer Billy Speed had been a member of the Austin Police Department for just over a year. He and his wife had had their first child almost a year and a half ago. Students watched as the officer arrived on the scene. They were counting on him to take down the sniper. Brenda and her class crowded in front of the windows and looked down toward the officer. They could now see him over the trees that were previously blocking their view.
We were glad to see a police officer, but when the boy who was watching with me saw that he only had a handgun, it seemed like that wasn't enough for the job that needed to be done.
The South Mall is built on a hill. The upper level, where Claire and Tom had been shot, is closest to the tower. A set of stairs divides the upper and lower levels. On either side of the steps were concrete walls, topped with statues and railing that divided the raised plaza from the tree-lined area below. Police Officer Speed had been slowly making his way across the lower level, sheltered by the wall and the railing above it. Speed wasn't the only one hiding behind the wall, though. Another officer, Jerry Culp, and others crouched below the wall for cover. Speed headed toward the granite steps leading to the plaza. Back then, 2 statues that have since been removed stood on either side of the stairs, one of Jefferson Davis and the other of Woodrow Wilson. He stood up and approached the statue with his gun drawn. In a store just across the street from the South Mall, KTBC News broadcaster Phil Miller was reporting what he had seen so far. Neil Spels had sent him out earlier, and Phil had been chasing the story across campus right after the shooting started. Later, on the evening television broadcast, Phil told Neil what he saw.
Occasionally, someone would run from one shelter to another, but the running was always sporadic, in short bursts, like on an open battlefield.
When he saw Officer Speed in his uniform across the South Mall, he went to join the group gathering by the steps.
I went back down the steps and saw a policeman making his way along the wall toward the steps leading to the mall. I wanted to get to him to try and find out what the police were going to do.
While Phil approached Officer Speed, the officer inched closer to the steps.
I kept close to the wall, but the policeman, I guess he thought he was sheltered by the trees above the wall, was walking sort of crouched over, but the sniper could see him. I yelled at the policeman, but he didn't hear me, and I was just about 10 yards away when I heard the rifle on the tower, and the patrolman fell to the ground. I don't know how that guy saw the policeman, or even how he could have shot him, but he did. A girl was fairly close to me. She just kept saying, "He shot the policeman. He shot the policeman."
Up above, students in Brenda's Shakespeare class saw it all through the windows.
He was down. It happened really fast. I mean, 1 second he was up, and the next second he was down and he wasn't moving.
The sniper shot Speed through the 3-inch gap between the railing's columns. The bullet entered through the back of his right shoulder and went into his chest.
He was so limp. He was completely limp. Like nothing was moving on that man. And there was so much blood. I think it seemed then like he couldn't be alive. But for the whole time he was there, we kept hoping that he would live.
Brenda and the other students had never seen anything like this.
We don't have those numberless mass shooting events where there's like a bad guy and we're all scared. It seemed like a movie that we had never seen. So seeing him, it seemed like just one guy, but we couldn't really tell. And he would just pop up and you could see him moving around the walkway that was at the top of the tower. And I was just like shock and disbelief, and how could this be happening, and what is his problem, and how can we make it stop?
Officer Jerry Culp, who had seen Speed get shot, left Speed on the ground bleeding. He went into a nearby building to call the police department.
Officer Speed just got shot out here.
He got shot?
Yes, sir, right through the shoulder, maybe in the lung.
Okay. Well,
Right in front.
right in front?
We've got him back behind the ledge right now. He's right out in front.
Okay, just exactly where can they pick him up?
I don't know. The guy's snapping at us from up there. I don't know whether they can get him to us.
I see. Okay, I'll advise the captain right away.
All right, that's directly in front of the tower.
Phil, the KTBC reporter who went to campus just before Neil Spells, stayed under the wall with the others, including the wounded Officer Speed. The police dispatch sent out a warning after getting Officer Culp's call.
Oh, yes, we just had a report that Officer Speed's on the ball and he has been shot.
While the alert went out to all other police units, Culp then returned to Officer Speed. He took Speed's gun and loosened his clothing. A nurse and another officer made their way onto the scene.
Some more students ran up. The other officers moved Speed to some shade.
They all moved Speed under a nearby tree and gave him water from a small tin cup. When an ambulance arrived a few buildings down, the group moved him again.
Then we all carried him back near the entrance to the post office where we put Speed in an ambulance.
Culp later reported Speed had been alive when they put him in the ambulance, but Officer Speed would be pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital.
This podcast is sponsored by Curology.
Sometimes it would almost hurt to look in a mirror.
Do you struggle with skincare issues that keep you feeling self-conscious and less than who you want to be?
I thought I'd have to live with this all my life, but then I found Curology.
With Curology, a personalized prescription formula is selected specifically for your skin by a licensed dermatology provider.
I could do it all online, and the products are sent right to my door.
Whatever your issues, acne, dark spots, clogged pores, fine lines, rosacea, and much more, Curology's science-based personalized prescription skincare can help treat it.
Curology didn't just clear up my skin. It changed my life.
Now get up to 6 skincare products free, up to a $52 value with free shipping, and a no-cost consultation with a licensed dermatology provider when you go to Curology.com. Go to Curology.com for this free offer. That's Curology.com. Prescription products are excluded from free product offer. Applies only to your first box. Subject to consultation. New subscribers only. See Curology.com for full details.
Jeep Adventure Days is going on now. Hurry in for great deals on a great selection of Jeep brand vehicles. Now get 15% below MSRP for an average of $8,922 under MSRP on the purchase of a 2023 Jeep Gladiator. Not compatible with lease offers or with any other consumer incentive offers. $8,922 average based on 15% below average MSRP from all 2023 Gladiator models in dealer stock. Residency restrictions apply. Take retail delivery by 10/2. Jeep is a registered trademark.
When you buy Kroger brand products, you feel like you're winning. That's because they offer proven quality at lower than low prices. In fact, we guarantee that you and your family will love how Kroger brand products taste, or you get your money back. So next time you're shopping for the family, look for delicious Kroger brand products, because they'll make you all feel like you're winning. Shop now, in-store, or online. Bakers, fresh for everyone.
Farther down the mall, news director Neil Spells arrived on the edge of campus in his iconic Red Rover.
So I pull up going toward the Littlefield Fountain, and I could see what's happening at that point. And I see, now by this time, police cars, not that many.
By the time Neil arrived on campus, about 20 minutes had passed since the sniper's first shot. He parked in front of the fountain and pulled out his mic to update his earlier broadcast.
I say to the DJ, put me on the air. And we now go to the University of Texas campus. Here's Neil Spells in Red Rover, sort of thing. And I pop in.
This is Neil Spells in Red Rover on the University of Texas campus. This is a warning to the citizens of Austin. Stay away from the university area. Traffic is now converging on this area, and there is a sniper on the university tower firing at will. Several persons have been injured.
Neil later wrote in his book, With the Bark Off, that a bullet flew over his head during this specific report.
And then when you get there and you see what's going on and hear what's happening, the enormity of it just takes hold.
Neil started up his Red Rover again and looped around campus.
So I was moving around, and that helped because I could see what was going on and from many different angles.
He kept his broadcast going as he drove deeper into campus.
There's no report as to who this man may be, or what he's doing up there, or what prompted this apparent madness.
Neil parked on the South Mall. He was close to the Woodrow Wilson statue that stood next to the plaza's stairs.
I'd duck down, I'd open the car door, I'd lean out of the car, and I'd broadcast just leaning out the window, or I'd open the door using the door as a shield.
With his mic in hand, he kept reporting from behind the car door, staying low to the ground to avoid the bullets being shot around him.
The man is located on the University of Tower observation deck below the clock, which now shows 12:25, and is shooting. He's shooting our direction. We just saw a puff of smoke. He fired again. It's a battle now.
On the plaza above Neil, Claire and Tom were not alone. A secretary from the graduate school's dean's office watched through her office window as someone fell to the ground. She immediately ran out to check on them. When she got outside, she realized she was being shot at and curled up behind the base of the flagpole on the plaza. A photographer on campus took her photo. It has since become widely circulated as a reminder of the event's terror.
A lady crouched down behind the base of the flagpole rather than lean out at all. She just sitting there, just, I'm sure it was just as hot as it could possibly be, leaning up against that, trying to put that between her and the tower.
While this was going on, students John Fox and James Love had already finished summer school for the day. They had gone to English class and then walked the 10 minutes back to James's apartment to enjoy the rest of the day off.
James Love and I had graduated together from Austin High, and he had a room at the Stag Co-op, which was on the southwest corner of 21st and Rio Grande. And so I was over there between the classes and playing chess with James and listening to the popular music radio station.
But news of the shooting was starting to spread via Neil's broadcast.
They came on the radio, they broke into the music and said that, well, I thought they said that there was someone on top of the University of Texas Tower with an air gun. Whatever they said, it sounded a lot more interesting than just sitting around playing chess. So James and I jumped up. I remember seeing the chess pieces fly in the air. And we jumped up off the bed and headed for campus.
The two friends walked through West Campus and headed across the drag. They stepped onto campus, unaware people were being killed.
So there was a strange little echo to each shot. When I heard urban gunfire in newsreels, say from Tripoli, Libya, or Sarajevo in Bosnia, urban gunfire, that's the sound. It's a sound I've heard rarely, and of course, never hope to hear again.
John and James headed farther into the heart of campus, not realizing the sniper could see them. Someone at the post office's loading dock stopped them, warning them to get inside as someone was shooting from the tower. The pair went inside the Education Department building and climbed the stairs to the top floor. They went into one of the classrooms and looked out the windows facing the tower.
Under the canopy of trees, you could see people laying on the main mall from there, and it looked like they needed help.
John could see Claire and Tom lying on the hot pavement. Tom was completely still, but Claire shifted around.
I don't know, I lay there about 30 minutes and there was more and more shooting, and which I didn't really know what it was, but then somebody yelled out someone was shooting from the tower. And so Tom never said another word. He was lying next to me.
In the trees surrounding the plaza and below the banister of stairs, students hid from the sniper as best they could. Some could see Claire, her maternity dress now stained in blood.
It hit me in the hip, And of course he was aiming for the baby. And so, I was just totally flattened. I couldn't see anything except those people. And they said that I finally would pull up my leg because it was getting burned so badly on the sidewalk. And I would pull it up, and they said that everyone was just groaning every time I moved because they were afraid the guy would shoot me again.
Claire wasn't thinking about being shot again, though.
I was, so, just heartbroken about, it's so big, and, Tom. And I remember thinking, well, I told you just how blue the sky was, and thinking, well, I guess this is it, and I just thought the world's just going to keep going, and it's just going to keep spinning, and I think, I don't know if I thought, if it were a war or outer space invasion, I don't know if I thought much beyond, I don't know if I thought maybe it was the end of everything.
Almost everyone I talked to while reporting told me Claire's story. I could see how much her story impacted each of them, but I wanted to hear it from her, and I also wanted to hear about her life beyond that day. I talked to Claire over the phone from her home in New Mexico.
Hi, how are you?
I'm just fine, thank you.
That evening, a storm was happening near Claire's house. She had just gotten home from work as a teacher.
Oh, it's a wonderful day.
Claire and I talked for over 3 hours that night. I got the sense that Claire is the type of person I could ask anything. She has a clearly optimistic attitude despite what happened to her in 1966. And she really cares about people, even the ones that have hurt her the most. Claire spent her entire life in Texas. She grew up in Dallas, and from early on, she joined the civil rights movement. And she got really involved. During her high school summer break in 1964, she started going to protests. They were fighting for the passage of the Civil Rights Act.
It was, really heady and amazing. I had been trained by the Congress of Racial Equality, young people in nonviolent resistance. And so we picketed several places, and I actually got put in jail.
Claire's parents were really supportive of her activism, but everyone in school shunned her. Like Claire said, she got arrested for protesting, and because of that, she kinda got blacklisted by the other kids' parents. So she didn't have that many friends in school.
I was severely shunned, and it was, very lonely, very hard, because kids were furious. They'd been brought up to, on some level, to hate black people. And even my friends that were pretty liberal were not, their parents told them to stay away from me.
Claire wanted to find a new set of friends, away from the kids at high school. So she got a job working at a restaurant.
One night I came home, and my dad, I don't know, it was just really weird. He told me I had to quit my job. And I called Mom, and I was just crying, and I went, Mom, because I had lost all my friends, and I just wanted to have something.
Her mom knew how passionate Claire was about the civil rights movement, and she wanted Claire to have a place to be herself. So in the summer of 1965, she sent Claire to a civil rights workshop in Austin. For the first time, Claire was around college students, and from then on, she made a new group of older friends who accepted her for who she was. And they shared her passion for civil justice. Claire said she was
treated with a lot of love because I was the only high school kid around. Everyone else was in college at the university, and so, it was just a very wonderful time, really, a very magic time.
At the workshop, Claire learned from local civil rights leaders such as Booker T. Bonner. Booker had studied at the University of Texas and was prominent in the movement across the South. The University of Texas has had a long history of racist policies and had only started admitting black undergraduate students 10 years before the shooting. Like many Southern campuses, the University of Texas became a heated setting for protests throughout the 1960s. Booker inspired the people at the workshop to take action.
And at the end of it, they said, it was kind of like, we don't want to lose this. And then they said, let's go to Mississippi.
Claire traveled east to Mississippi. She joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. It was a key player to the peaceful activism taking place in the South at that time.
It was one of the more militant of the groups. It was the one with the young people.
While in Mississippi, Claire's parents separated, and she had to go back home to Texas. That winter, Claire got pregnant. She would soon be a single mom in the conservative South, and she knew she would be judged in her hometown. So she moved to Austin, which became a safe haven for her. She started working as a waitress and taking night classes to get her high school diploma. She said all her friends were really excited about the baby.
They just thought it was wonderful that I was pregnant. You have to realize I was with the most radical young people on the campus. And, there was absolutely I never felt one bit of shame from anyone. Even I didn't feel from my parents.
As the school year ended, Claire began to think about what was next. She didn't have a high school diploma yet, and summer school would soon start at the University of Texas.
So I went to this professor, and I asked him if he would work it out so I could start college. He was very kind of sarcastic, and he looked at my college boards and said, well, they're not brilliant. He kind of scorned me. Of course, I was, 6 months pregnant. And then he picked up the phone, and he said, we have a little girl here who's had a real rough time family-wise, and, let's let her into the college. So they let me in without my high school diploma.
So Claire started college in the summer of 1966. But she wasn't sure what she'd do in the future.
I was, on a road of activism. I thought maybe I might teach in a university or be an anthropologist. So no, I didn't know what I was doing. Just trying to make things better.
But just a few weeks later, on August 1st, 1966, while lying on the scorching plaza, Claire stared up at the sky. Her entire future seemed like it was slipping away. A 19-year-old woman appeared at her side. She had seen Claire lying out on the plaza and ran up to her as bullets flew overhead. Her name was Rita Jones.
She asked if she could help me, and I said, please lie down, because I was still afraid we would get shot. And she lay down next to me, and we just talked. And we just talked about, the people we knew in common. I told her my name. I told her Tom's name, and we lay there, and just it started getting harder and harder. I was starting to feel more. It's not really pain exactly, but I knew the baby was dead. I knew I didn't know it was he at the time, but he had, fallen down, slipped over to my side. And, but I just didn't really think about that. And we talked about very ordinary things.
Rita kept Claire conscious and distracted from the chaos around her. Close by, John Fox and James Love, the two students who finished summer school for the day and had returned to campus out of curiosity, left the safety of the education building. They walked up the road toward the South Mall, toward the tower, toward Claire, Tom, and the rest of the mayhem they had seen through the windows. Overhead, trees provided some cover from the bullets. They eventually joined a group crouching for cover near the stairs on the South Mall.
One of the first things I noticed when I walked up to the base of the statue was a big bloodstain.
This was the spot Officer Speed had been shot. Speed had already been moved, so John and James hadn't seen his body, just the blood-soaked ground where he had been. Tom and Claire hadn't been moved from the hot concrete plaza yet, and Rita stayed by their side.
It was about 100 feet from the people we saw. They were laying right in the middle of the main mall. And from the beginning, pardon me, from the beginning, I stared at, there was a woman that was obviously pregnant. She was about 8 months pregnant, laying on the ground. Pregnant woman laying in the middle of the mall was always what I focused on. Seems like she was, it seemed like she was in the most need of help.
While the scorching Texas sun beat down, John felt the gravity of the day sink in.
August 1st is always hot in Texas, and I was dressed in some black trousers and a dark short sleeve shirt. So I was in dark clothing on a hot day, in the sun without the shade, and the adrenaline, of course, just pumping. So I suffered a mild heat stroke. I'm thinking I became nauseous and dizzy. I know I needed medical help. And so I crawled underneath a hedge that was nearby, where those hedges were, right off the sidewalk. And I don't know how long I was in there.
Under the bushes that lined the wall, all John could do was listen to the shots echoing around him.
The firing increased. The gunshots increased the longer I was there.
A different sound captured his attention, though. A more familiar one coming from the tower.
The chimes go off every 15 minutes. And I kept thinking, every 15 minutes? I kept thinking that every 15 minutes, that's another quarter hour that she'd been laying out there under the sun. She was shot, laying on hot concrete. I could tell she was alive because she moved her legs, so she needed help.
Sheltered by the bush, John started to get an idea.
When I cooled down and came out of the shade, that's when I realized that those people laying in the mall did not have the option of crawling into shade and crawling back out like I did, like I had just done. And it made it more intense within me, the knowledge, the need that they needed to be taken to shelter.
Next time on Season 4 of Darkness.
Then all of a sudden, a high-powered rifle bullet went past my right ear.
I got knocked down. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't move at all.
And there was some popping. You could hear pop, pop.
In this episode, I featured the lives of people on campus that day in 1966. Like last episode, I can't fit every story or person's name in, but want to recognize and remember those lost in this tragedy. So here's a list of everyone else injured or killed that day on campus and what we do know about them. Dr. Robert Hamilton Boyer was 33 years old and had just returned from a research center in Mexico City. He was a mathematical physicist who taught at the University of Texas the year prior to the shooting. Liverpool University had offered him a new teaching position, but he wanted to visit friends in Austin as well as his family in Pittsburgh before going to England. On August 1st, he headed to the tower for business. He planned to meet his friend for lunch later that day, but never made it. On the South Mall, a bullet struck the lower left side of his back. He was the first shooting victim to arrive at the hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival at 12:12 p.m. His findings on black holes, called the Boyer-Lindquist coordinates, were published the following year. He was married and had a son and a daughter. His wife was pregnant with their third child when he died. Just past the South Mall's Littlefield Fountain, Roy Del Schmidt was finishing up a job as the shooting unfolded. He was a 29-year-old electrician who worked for the city of Austin, where he'd lived for the past 2 decades. He was married and had a daughter. That day, he was shot in the chest and was declared dead on arrival at the hospital. Thomas Aquinas Ashton was a 22-year-old Peace Corps volunteer. He was a University of California graduate, now at UT to learn Persian. He and the other volunteers planned to go to Iran that September to teach English. After his class, he headed to the Union for lunch to join the other 76 Peace Corps volunteers heading to Iran with him. On his way to the Student Union, a bullet hit the left side of his chest. He was pronounced dead on arrival at the hospital. Near the Varsity Theater on the Drag, Janet Paulos and Abdul Kassab were going to lunch. They planned to get married on August 20th. Janet was a history major from Garland, Texas, and Abdul was a chemistry graduate student from Iraq. Janet was shot in the chest, and as Abdul tried to help her, he was shot in the right elbow and hip. Both were sent to the hospital and recovered. However, they had to push their wedding date back a week. Devereaux Maitland Huffman was a 31-year-old psychology graduate student. He was heading out of the psychology building near the South Mall when he was shot in the arm. He was taken to the hospital where he recovered. On the West Mall, Nancy Harvey and Ellen Evgenides were walking away from the tower. Nancy was a 21-year-old education major and a part-time assistant at the library in the tower. She was also pregnant. Ellen was 26 years old and also worked in the tower as a university employee. A bullet struck Nancy in the thigh before ricocheting and hitting Ellen in the leg too. Both later recovered. Irma Garcia and Oscar Roivela were heading to their biology class. The two 21-year-old students were dating at the time. Irma was originally from Los Angeles, California, while Oscar was from Bolivia. That day, they were one street over from the drag and walking deeper into campus. Irma was shot in the left shoulder, and moments later, Oscar was shot in the left arm, chest, and back. 2 other students, named Jack Stevens and Jack Pennington, rescued the couple, who were then sent to the hospital. The bullet that struck Irma also went into her chest, hitting her lung in addition to breaking her arm, ribs, and collarbone. They both later recovered. A block north of the tower, Robert Hurd had responded to reports of shooting on campus. He was a 36-year-old Associated Press reporter and a former Marine who had spent time in Korea. He was hit in his left shoulder while covering the event, but later recovered. Newlyweds Brenda and Adrian Littlefield were headed over to the payroll department in the tower that day to grab Brenda's paycheck. They had gotten married just over a week before. The two were close to the tower when the shots came their way. A bullet grazed 18-year-old Brenda's left hip, while 19-year-old Adrian was shot in the chest. Both survived, but Adrian struggled with paralysis and had difficulties walking afterward. 26-year-old Avelino Esparza was a carpenter from San Antonio. He was shot in his left arm near the post office. He later recovered. Over on the east side of the tower, 23-year-old David Gunby was shot in the stomach when he exited the library. The electrical engineering student was rushed to the hospital. During his surgery, the doctors discovered he had previously only had one functioning kidney, which was now heavily injured. David survived another 35 years on dialysis. He did the 5-hour procedure every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But the kidney failure still took its toll on him. He had a nearly fatal rejected kidney transplant, and the disease eventually caused him to lose his eyesight. David decided to stop the dialysis treatments on November 5, 2001. A week later, he passed away at 58 years old. Due to the bullet injuring his only working kidney, his death was declared a homicide, making him the final victim of the shooting. He had a daughter, a son, and 5 grandkids. This season of Darkness is reported, written, and hosted by me, Sarah Kinney. Heather Stewart is this season's producer, sound designer, and editor. Katie Penchikautka and Robert Quigley are the executive producers. This podcast is presented by the Drag Audio Production House, which is part of Texas Student Media at the University of Texas at Austin's Moody College of Communication. The associate producers are Jade Emerson, Liv Gamble, Cameron Greiser, Mackenzie Matwick, Ashley Miznazi, Marissa Green, MJ Tilton, Guido Palufo, Liam Quigley, Aurora Berry, and Jeannie Sanchez. The cover art was created by Alexa Georgelos. Sophia Vargas Karam is the drag's marketing and communications manager. Thank you to the Austin History Center, Neil Spels, and the LBJ Presidential Library for help with the archival audio tapes. Special thanks to the University of Texas School of Journalism and Media and Texas Student Media. Also to Jay Bernhardt, Rachel Davis Mercy, David Reif, and Gerald Johnson. A huge thanks to Leslie Schrock for all her support and guidance. The Drag is a non-profit educational organization that is made possible by individual donations. Please support our work by going to thedragaudio.com/donate. Every dollar goes directly to producing more content like this, while giving students an amazing educational experience. Thank you.
With US Cellular, it's just $29.99 per line for 1, 2, or 3 lines. So you don't need that robot daughter you built to get a 4th line for family plan pricing.
Oh, Rope Elizabeth? She's not gonna like that.
The robots will prevail.
Oh boy.
Get the low rate of $29.99 per line. US Cellular, built for us. Terms apply. Visit uscellular.com for details.
We value human connection with fewer distractions. U.S. Cellular, built for us. Visit your U.S. Cellular authorized agent, Cellular Advantage, located at 918 Locust Street in Glenwood.
When you buy Kroger brand products, you feel like you're winning. That's because they offer proven quality at lower than low prices. In fact, we guarantee that you and your family will love how Kroger brand products taste, or you get your money back. So next time you're shopping for the family, look for delicious Kroger brand products, because they'll make you all feel like you're winning. Shop now, in-store, or online. Bakers, fresh for everyone.